Okay, so let's briefly review where we left off last time. Let me go ahead and press play at the top here. Now we have a level set up where if I click start, it's our level 1. And then when we tested our build, we could see that our quit button was working as well. So let's go ahead and go to our project here, scenes folder, and let's go to our level 01. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove this text for now because, well, I guess we could leave it in there. Maybe we'll program it so this text updates every every level or something. So let's see. Let's shrink this down and maybe we'll place it in the bottom left corner here. Let's hold Alt and middle mouse click and just kind of move it up here. Now, if you remember from last time, if you hit T, it allows you to use your transforms like this. Let's make sure that this is being moved together. There we go. So we'll just say level 1, and actually maybe we'll place it, I'm trying to think, because we're going to have a bucket moving across. We'll place it here, and we'll deactivate it for now. Okay, and what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to go ahead and create a bucket and have it move across. So let's go ahead and create a placeholder. So right-click, go down to 2D Object, Sprites, and then we're just going to go with a square. And this is going to represent our bucket for now. Let's hit F to focus. It looks very tiny in comparison to where our main camera is, which is down here. So we want to make sure that essentially our square, let's see what's going on with our canvas. So we have screen space overlay here. We'll do same thing like we did, scale with screen size. And our scale is here, our square is here. And let's see. Screen space camera, maybe we do main camera like this. And let's hit F to focus. And then scale up our square. And then we'll just put it down here. And periodically I'll hit Control S to save. So this is going to represent our bucket. We're going to actually make a bucket later. Or actually I'll probably provide you with an image of a kid carrying a bucket. And so right now I'm just sort of, like I said, scaling this up. We can probably go 50, 50, 50. Something like that. The issue with this is the bigger you go, the more you have to play with the numbers while you're coding. Now, inside of our scripts folder, let's right-click and create another C# script and just call this player movement. And this is going to be the script that controls our player movement. Sometimes you'll see this called player controller, depending on the number of animations. I don't think we're going to have any animations for this unless we go back in and fine-tune this. Let's go ahead and double-click this script and open it up. Actually, one last thing we want to do before we switch over is we just want to grab our player movement script and drop it on top of our square. Now, the thing is, I might play with maybe the camera so that we don't have to scale up our cube so large. But for now, we'll just leave it alone at 50, 50, 50. All right, so let's jump into this script now. All right, we're going to start off really slow, especially if you're just kind of getting back into coding. And we'll delete this start method here. Or if you're just first time, it's kind of your first time really getting into coding. So we're going to create a variable, and this is just a temporary storage place, and variables can store a variety of things. This one's going to store numbers with decimals in it called floats. So we'll do public float, and we're going to call this move speed. Now, this is really just going to control the speed in which our character moves. Now, the thing to take note of is when I made that public, notice on the script itself, we now have a move speed variable that is public. So if I make this 1 or 2 or whatever, this number we'll use later to multiply by our current input. And that input is going to be WASD. So if you need to, you can go to Edit, and I believe it's under Project Settings. Edit Preferences, I believe. Let's see. Edit Preferences. And then we have Let's see. Actually, I was right the first time. Here it is, input manager. Now, we're going to be using the new input system on the next game, but for now, I'm sort of easing you in. We have an input here that's already created by Unity called horizontal, so I'm going to click on that and copy it. And this is mapped to the x-axis. So this is important because if you look here, this is the x-axis of our position x of our object, and we want it to be moved this way. And this is also mapped to the joystick, as well as, I believe there's another horizontal up here, the A and D keys. So it's already mapped for us. So inside of the code, let's jump over really quick. Let's go ahead and write the code that accesses that horizontal input. And what I think I'm going to do is really just type it out instead of you hearing all the clinking and clanking, and then I'll come back to it. All right, so we created another float, which is any number like 1.1, 1.2, of a decimal value, right? It's really just a number with a decimal value. And this variable is going to hold the input.getAxis horizontal. So what does that mean? So when I press that A key, it's going to, essentially what this does is when I press the A key, it's set to a positive value, and then the D is set to a negative value. So what does that mean? Look at my position X here. As I move to the left, my number goes negative, and as I move it to the right, my number becomes positive. This is important because what that variable is doing, and something I forgot to clarify is this is going to be used inside of, so I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to push my arrow key down inside my update function. Now my update function here runs every frame. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this private here. That's why I'm getting that error. And we could actually delete this and hit enter to reset it. So this runs every frame. So every frame, what we're going to be checking is if the A key or the D key or the left and right arrow key is being pressed, because that's also mapped to this, or if you have a joystick, if your joystick is being mapped. So what we want to do is we want to move the position of that X, of that square on the x-axis depending on how much this value is. So how do we do that? Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to type another line of code out. It's not going to be the complete code, but I want you to we'll work through it. Okay, so a couple things. So this doesn't seem too daunting or scary. Let's talk about this line of code. So we're creating a new variable that's of type vector3 called new position. So what is a vector3? Like, what is it really storing? It's storing 3 numbers in a specific order. So if we jump back into Unity, we notice we have an X, a Y, and a Z position. So currently our character here is set to -174 on the Y position, but its X and Y are X and Z are set to 0. If we look at this, we're creating a new vector that we're going to use later to actually move our model. And what we're saying here is this position is currently storing the current position, so that it's storing that 0, 174, 0. And actually what I might do is I might just dock this to the side here and then leave this docked here so you guys can see that a little bit better. Okay, so this might help a little bit better to kind of look at what we're doing code-wise as well as in the game, instead of having to jump back and forth. So this is our current position. And how do I know this is our current position? Because see how this says rect transform, and this script is attached to this square? It's actually accessing the position part of that transform component. And what we're doing is we're saying we're going to add a new vector3. So this is completely new information coming in. And what we're going to say is, remember this runs every frame, so this is constantly running. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 0.1 on the x-axis. That means it's going to move 0.1, and then we move that 0.2, and then 0.5, let's say. And that might be too low because I'm noticing it's not moving, but this runs pretty quickly. And that's why we created this move speed, which we're going to add later. But anyway, we have new vector3 0.1f, so it's going to move. Now, all this is doing is creating a variable. This isn't actually moving our model. It's just saying, hey, this new position variable is currently storing whatever this is plus 1, over time. The way we move that is we say, hey, our current position is now equal to new position. New position is this new variable here that's storing these three values. So if I save this and I press play in here, let me move this over so we could see this. You'll notice our character now moves, and it moves pretty quickly. So there's a couple things we need to do to adjust this. One, we could say, okay, we have created this move speed variable. Also, this isn't really working at a normalized time. What that means is it's not moving smoothly according to the clock of the computer. It's moving according to the frame rate. So there's some built-in stuff that we can use to get this to run smoothly. And that is by multiplying it by time.delta time, which is considered military time or the time that your PC currently runs at. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to multiply this by time.delta time. And I'm going to save that off. Now, what you'll notice is that the object will move slower, but a lot smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and press play here. And see how it's moving at a smooth, consistent rate? And that's in 0.1 increments, opposed to just flying off the handle. So you might be like, well, that's too slow. I'm just going to go in here and edit this value, which you could. You could say, okay, now I'm going to move it to 0.5. The thing with game development, though, is whenever you're programming, you're not supposed to think about just yourself as the programmer. And maybe if you're developing your own game, you can think of it that way, but more than likely you're going to need help eventually with a team. So that's where these public variables being exposed in the editor come to. You might have a game designer who's going to control, say, okay, you know what, I'm going to come and build the levels and stuff. So for this bucket moving, and really this is just the same thing as a platformer, right? Now we're sort of coding this movement speed. Let's go ahead and grab our movement speed here. And then I'm going to add another multiply symbol here. And I'm going to multiply this by move speed. And I'm going to save this. And now we have 1 times 0.1. So really, we're not changing it much. But watch what happens as I start to fiddle. If I press play here, and I start moving, and I'm like, okay, that's a little faster. Let's see, what does 2 get me? 2 gets me a lot better. 3 gets me even quicker. And I'm just sort of looking down here. 5. So say I like 5, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put this as 5. You might also be like, well, that's cool, but I thought we were going to make a game where somebody can actually play it. Well, don't forget, we also have this value here that we created, or this variable here called horizontal input, which is taking into the input of our movement. Well, if our horizontal input is going to be feeding in number values based on the arrow keys or A and D, we don't really need this 0.5f. We could just paste that in and then save it. And now when I press play, if I push A and D, you can see now my character's moving. And I kind of like that 5. And what I want to do is think about things like, okay, well, here's our image of our thing here. What's next? So next we'd like to get it, so if we're thinking in gameplay and logic or with the game design document, letters falling from the sky, as well as a word showing up on the screen. So that's it for our basic player movement. And to be honest with you, you should always think about refining or having fun or tweaking the game later.